tuned in to www.oghuskyradio, broadcasting live from the east side of Los Angeles, worldwide. Let's get into this shit, man. Go ahead and introduce yourself, man. Ain't no...
Yeah. CALE 1 from big K2S crew, Los Angeles. Kill to succeed.
For those that don't know, what is K2S, and what do you guys represent, or what is it you guys do? For those that don't know, you know what I mean? People just tuning in.
K2S is one of the oldest crews in LA. It's like East Side crew, and I wasn't from it from the very beginning. I was a lot younger than these cats when all that kind of started coming around.
Yeah.
But all the conversation of, with my boys Deffer, Prime, Geo, Rick, all the stuff they were doing, it just kind of got around town. And so when I was a kid, K2S always had a really big reputation, So, growing up, watching people like Slick paint, it's just, it was very influential in my career. So, years later, probably about a little over 10 years ago, I was fortunate enough to run into Rick and like hang out at Belmont and like paint with these cats and we just got to know each other, and I got put in the crew. So
word up. Where did you grow up in?
I grew up in South LA.
South LA.
Yeah.
Well, who are some of the artists from South LA? I mean, that you could kind of noticed or unnoticed. You know what I mean, or what influenced you?
Well, very early, man. What influenced me was a lot of the buzz mobbing that was going on.
Okay.
So around my neighborhood, there was a lot of TNT. It was a lot of NTS, and so KCC. Of course, every bus that I got on in my neighborhood, like going to school, was a big, destruction of the freaking bus, dude. So it's kind of like here, like this, kind of like this, where it's like tags everywhere.
Yeah.
So I was like influenced a lot by that, and as I started to venture out, you gotta understand, dude, I come from a very strict environment at home.
Okay.
So my dad was like super strict, and so I didn't have much time. Like between the time I got out of school and the time I had to be home, there wasn't that much time. So I had to do my exploring kind of like very local,
Okay.
I remember Pyre from STN
Okay.
used to do some pieces like down by Adams and all that stuff. So I used to walk down these alleys and see like these old school. I mean, now I think like they're old school looking characters, but back then I was like, oh, this is dope. This is really fresh, because I was drawing from a young age.
Okay.
I mean, I've always been drawing, so it was like watching these cats, not watching them paint, but like seeing what they did, along with what the gangs were doing. Because I grew up in a blood neighborhood, and it was neighborhood bloods and Drifters neighborhood. So I would see like these big like fucking old English,
Letters, yeah.
DFS, and then I would see like NHB. But the thing about the Bloods is that they used to like draw their hand sign on the wall.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a trip to me, because I would walk to school. At that time, I was still in elementary school.
Okay.
So I would walk to school, and I would just like go by this wall, and it was like a big hand, with like some letters.
Yeah.
And I was like 10 years old, man. I didn't really know, But I was like, that's fresh, dude. Like, I want to do that. You know what I'm saying? It's like I wanted to do that on a wall. So, yeah, dude, it's like I was influenced basically by gangs.
It's just a trip, because a lot of people don't credit the gang culture, you know what I mean? And that's why I asked that question, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Especially the block styles, or even just, you got to figure even just drawing the hands, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what was crazy, man, is that even around that area, this was like there was like some MS blocks.
Yeah.
But it was like, it wasn't MS-13, it was MSS. It was like Mara Salvatrucha Stoners.
Oh yeah.
It was before the 13,
Yeah.
And I remember, dude, like one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and I grew up in the third floor, an apartment, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I woke up and I looked out the window, and these cats were like doing this cross with like the steps under it.
Yeah.
And they were like writing "Rest in Peace," and I guess one of their homies got killed or whatever. But that was like, oh, these fools are like straight spray painting some shit on the wall in the middle of the night, So yeah, dude,
That's a
dude,
lot of the influence that you had.
yeah, dude, because I was like spray paint, wall, cross drawing. I like to draw, you know.
Yeah.
I want to do that, and this was like 1986, somewhere around there, you know.
So 86, man. So when did you say how'd the name Kale, or when did Kale come about?
Kale
then?
is a long story,
Okay.
but I'm gonna make it real brief.
All right, let's do that.
So, in my apartment building, there was this dude older than me. I think he was already in high school at that time, you know. But we pretty much started talking about graffiti, like about writing, you know.
Yeah.
And back then it was all connectable styles, and anybody who ever rode on the buses know exactly what that is, you know.
Yeah.
Just connectables, you know. And so it was a matter of like choosing a name with letters that like flowed, you know. So for some fucking reason, man, I wanted to write scale.
Okay.
Right? SKALE. Because it all went really good together, you know?
Yeah.
So I started doing that like as toys.
So when you say the connectables, like the non-stops?
Yeah,
Okay.
the non-stops, we used to call them connectables.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started writing that shit as toy as I could possibly do it, you know?
Yeah.
And anyhow, like I said, the strict, you know, household and everything. You know, I used to just be able to go out in the hallway in the building and just like hang out with my neighbors and shit. But because of that fucker, he'd be like, "Come on, let's go right." So he'd take me out into the street. Let's go right. So one night I was writing, and then I didn't know. It was
Okay.
just a building. It didn't have a cross on it or anything.
Yeah.
But I guess it was like a born again Christian thing, temple or whatever.
Yeah.
So this dude came out and he's like grabbed me, and then I pretty much got loose and I ran away. And anyway, so when we got back to the apartments, I was like, dude, my name is way too long. It was just too long, dude.
Yeah.
Because it took me too long to write
right,
it. I got
yeah.
caught. So I took the S out, and then
Okay.
he told me kale with a K was a vegetable or whatever. I didn't know back. I mean, I know now because it's in the market all over the place, right? So I ended up changing the K to a C, and then I've been kale ever since.
I was fortunate to chop it up with you. I'm known for the pre-interview, and you were anti the pre-interview. You wanted to freestyle the interview.
Exactly. That was
That was one of the things
very
we had-
important.
we had
Yeah, because I
discussed.
want to be completely honest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like as insightful as I could be.
And like I said, I've been fortunate to chop it up with you at the world famous Talmont.
At the
Shout out
Talmont,
to
man.
Tyler from K2S,
Yeah.
having us out there, you know, inviting us to his spot.
Yeah.
But one of the things is the ever-changing climate that is GRAFF, man.
Yeah.
And you're an advocate for your own, I guess, your own ideas, your own, I wouldn't say agendas, but one of the things we talked about was like, oh, it's not being passed on, or characters. One of the things you had told me is that it's a progression. You shouldn't just stop at tags. And if I could have you speak on that, and one of the things I had told you was like, well, the older cats ain't out there fucking doing anything, but you just did an event Saturday showing characters. So like break all that down, like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think the biggest thing to me in anything, like whether it's GRAFF or you want to be an MC or a DJ, whatever you want to do, you know, I think you should never rest. Like when you hit a point where you're getting praised for your work, you know, like that shouldn't be a stopping point for you. You know, when you feel comfortable, you can just go and rock a wall, and like everybody be like, "Oh, that's fresh." Like that should not stop you from wanting to be better. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't think it should stop. I mean, it shouldn't stop anybody. So I am of the philosophy that you could always learn something. You know, I try to draw every single day because I think I can get better. You know, there's this one, you know, I don't know if anybody that follows me on Instagram, they know that once in a while I'll write something on a piece of paper and I take a picture and I post it. It's just something that comes to my mind. And one of those things was that I wrote, I don't draw because I can. I draw because I can get better.
Shit.
You know? And so that's the reason why I wanted to do that show. And this is kind of like touching on a couple of things because I wanted to do that show for the youngsters. So because I think the climate of graffiti has changed. You know, there was a time, and I'm not going to mention any names.
Okay.
But there was times where I would go to like the Motor Yard or like the Belmont Tunnel. You know, I was like 13, 14 years old, and I would watch these cats paint. And you couldn't talk to them. They were not very approachable, you know? And God forbid you would even touch their black book. Like, you couldn't even look at it, you know? So,
Well,
but
well, okay, but let me before we go any further. For those
Yeah.
that don't like, the black book was your own sketches though. It was your own
it
drawing.
was your own. It was your own.
Yeah.
And then back now it's a black book.
And
We used to call it a piece book.
Okay.
So your piece book was yours. It was all of your ideas, all of your characters, all your
contrary
letter
to
styles.
what is common now.
Now it's like you pass it around, everybody hits it, you know.
Yeah.
But back then it was a very sacred thing, so you couldn't even look at it, you know.
Okay. I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Yeah,
to
for
clarify. But so then you're not able to approach these guys, at these yards. So
Yeah, because I think we grew up with that rule that if you're a toy, which we for sure were, you don't walk up to some dude that's rocking a fresh burner and interrupt them halfway through his burner. Like, hey, can I look at your book? Hey, how did you do that? You don't do that. And you never painted their walls.
Yeah.
When we painted Belmont, we'd go in the tunnel or like in the little tiny walls by the little stage area.
Yeah.
We'd paint those, but never the big walls because those belong to the dudes that were really doing big stuff. K2S, all the dudes that were UCA, all the dudes that were painting down there, MAK, all those cats. Anyhow, but I think that climate has changed. I think those days are long gone.
Yeah.
And the reason why those days are gone is because now we have social media.
Yeah.
We have social media where, you post a picture on Instagram and, depending on how many followers you have a gang of people looking at your work. And so over time, it gives those youngsters a sense of them already knowing you,
Yeah.
Like I run across people like, yeah, I follow you on Instagram. Oh, dope. Cool. Like all of a sudden that now makes
There's
it cool.
a connection.
There's a connection right there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So unless you want to be a real asshole and say, well, I don't even know you, dude. You know? I mean, you're running a risk now of looking like a dick.
Yeah.
So, yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So now it actually behooves you to be more open with the public.
So has that change? Was it hard for you, or is it something that you didn't embrace right away?
Not for me. And I'll tell you why. Because over the years, I've never really. This is the thing, man. It's like I still look at myself like, like that kid that was painting back in '94, like just trying to get his skills up.
Because you're still pushing yourself. On
I'm
that
still
same
pushing
level.
myself. I mean, I still admire the people who I admire, and then I come across even younger people than me, who I admire too.
Yeah.
It was such a great thing to have cats like Touche and Tuzer, Tetris, Ace. You know what I'm saying? Deity and Kim come through to that show because I'm still a fan of good art.
Yeah.
So even if you started writing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but you're fresh and I like what you're doing, I'm a fan because I like to see that happen. So for me, the change of, the whole online fame or whatever the hell that is, it was like incremental. I kind of like snuck into it.
Okay.
I reached 10,000 followers on Instagram just recently.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, all right, cool, But I'm still like, oh, I still meet people that don't know me, And that's why I'm like, I got to do more work, I have to still continue to push and push. So that way, maybe one day I'll feel like, I hope I never get there.
Yeah, but it definitely keeps you ahead of the game, or keeps you consistent with the game. With that, I gotta ask: has the internet helped Graph, or is it good? Is it good or bad?
The internet has helped new Graph.
Okay, what's new Graph?
Like the new generation.
Okay.
It has helped all the new generations. It helps the older generation, like the guys that are older than me.
Yeah.
It helps them, I guess, in a sense where they can get their name out to more people, get the history out, and for them to tell their story to people in other countries. But for the youngsters, it helps them more because now I feel like they don't have to do that much work.
Straight up, yeah.
They don't have to really go and risk their ass and really experiment on their own because now you log on, dude. I mean, how many websites?
Yeah.
Just Instagram alone, how many pages of, graffiti, like, worldwide graffiti, worldwide street art, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
You could always go to those sites and look at work from across the world and it'll influence your style just like we were influenced. I was influenced by going to the Jefferson Yard and looking at the LTS's paint, going to Motor and like, you know, and seeing these cats paint. But that to us was more direct. Like we'd have to take the bus there.
Yeah.
We didn't have to just like put in our password and like look at all this new graph, you know? So it was more difficult for us. So the internet helps the younger community, the younger community of graph artists, because it helps them to interchange ideas, and you know, maybe it makes it more difficult to stand out at that point. But you know, it's like anything else, dude. It's a tool.
Yeah.
You know, like when we got beepers, when we had pagers, it was a tool for us to like let each other know, like all the codes, like all the codes that we used to use. Hey, we're on Broadway, you know,
like,
and they knew that code was Broadway.
So is there a difference with legal and illegal? I mean, for you, how do you view it? Or
well, I mean, look, man.
And is there?
Can
you call yourself a graffiti writer if it's illegal?
See, that really pisses me off, man.
Okay.
It really makes me think, and it really does upset me when I hear like these old cats, like me. I'm old as fuck, but when I hear these old cats like really like talking down to the younger generation, like, oh, you guys are not real because you guys didn't bomb. Well, I'll tell you what. When we used to stand on the corner and fucking hit 10 buses, we could do that because you know what? Back then, no one had a cell phone.
Yeah.
No one had a camera to catch you and call the cops. By the time the cops got there, we were gone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
Different era. Now, not only has it become easier to get busted, dude, the charges are ridiculous. You get caught writing one time, you might do 6 months in county, dude. You know what I'm saying? And then it's kind of like, I mean, I give the young cats that are bombing right now, I give them mad props, dude.
Yeah, it's
because they're doing it under this umbrella of like, you know, where it's like no tolerance for graph, and they're still going out there and risking their ass. That's fresh.
Yeah.
And so yeah, maybe you have a handful of guys doing that. Whereas 20 years ago, we had 200 motherfuckers doing it.
Yeah.
But you know what? Times have changed. And that's where, you know, the conversation we were having where like, you know, yeah, graph does change. You know what I'm saying? I don't think these kids have to really follow the rules that we had to follow. I think there should be the same kind of respect for graph. They should know that. But they're not necessarily bound to, you know, do the same things that we did. It was different.
OGSKRadio.com, Letterstoliveby.com, CALE, K2S crew. Is hip hop graph and is graph hip hop? That's a big thing right now. I believe it was Grandmaster Flash got interviewed and stated that that it wasn't, and from there it spawned a huge debate. Where do you stand on that? The reason why I ask is because anyone that has been fortunate to talk to you knows that you're very opinionated.
Absolutely.
For lack of a better term.
Absolutely, man.
So, where do you stand on that? Is hip hop graph?
I mean, I can only speak about it in a personal way, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I grew up in a neighborhood where there were a lot of gangs. Yeah. You know, something happened where I didn't gravitate towards the gang life. I gravitated towards graffiti because of the characters. I've been a fan of characters forever, you know. Yeah. And letters and color schemes, productions and all that, right? But at the same time, I found hip hop through Run DMC. And on a bench in elementary school with this kid, his name was Willie. And this kid would rap Run DMC songs to me when I was like 9, 10 years old, 10, 11, whatever, you know? So there's a correlation there for me.
Okay.
Where I think the movement of graph and the flavor of graffiti really reflects the rhythm of hip hop music. And so to me, there's a connection. Maybe to people like Scene and like, you know, Lady Pink, because they grew up in a whole different time where people listened to, because there wasn't really that much hip hop back then, you know? There was a lot more rock, there was a lot, you know, and so you know, you do graph, but you're listening to like some rock, metal, fucking whatever, you know? I get it, you know? Yeah. Does it belong together? Of course it does. Of course it does. Because how can you ever imagine a, you know, KRS-One show without graph? You know, how do you like? For example, I had the chance of doing a portrait of Jay Dilla on stage at the Solstice a few years ago.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was hip hop. It was Redman and all that stuff, Chino XL, whatever, you know. It was the music. But you can't associate hip hop now without the visual of graffiti, you know. Does it belong together? Sometimes it does.
Okay.
I wouldn't go paint a backdrop behind, you know, Lil Wayne. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd rock something like with, you know, Psycho Realm. You know what I'm saying? Like with Rakim, of course.
Yeah.
I think there are instances where it does belong and it goes and it just meshes really, really well. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a rule that graffiti has to be hip hop. I think you could be into, I don't know, Spanish rock.
Yeah,
and still kill a wall with nothing but flavor, you know. So I don't think GRAFF is conducive to like what music you're into.
But for you, it is.
For me, is because
I'll
it
explain
grew.
why I say that.
It grew like within me, you know, at the same time.
Because then the reason why I said that, then who decides who has the ultimate say on what anything is?
Nobody.
As far as that?
Nobody. It's like, you know, I'm 39 years old right now.
Yeah.
I have some very strict beliefs in some things, you know, but it doesn't mean that 15 years from now, all of that could be bullshit to someone else, you know? And so, yeah, whatever, homeboy's opinion, it's bullshit to me, you know? Maybe to him is very important, but whatever with that. I don't even listen to his shit. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather listen to Joey Badass, like some new shit, you know? And that's why, like, I like to see new GRAFF, new shit. Like, why would I want to see some dude that's been painting for 30 years and still see the same ass piece he's been doing for 30 years?
Real shit.
I'd rather follow how GRAFF and music is evolving for how it makes me feel and what it makes me do. You know what I'm saying?
Word up.
So thank God for Pandora because it lets me hear new stuff.
Thank God for OG Husky Radio, homie. What are you talking about? Huh? Letterstoliveby.com, KOK2S crew.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming through. Any shout outs before we cut out? Man?
Yeah, man. Shout out to, you know, OG Husky Radio LA and my boy Jenko outside for, you know, rolling me through. And of course to my crew, K2S, Big Sleeps, Deffer Prime, Slick, everybody out there, hip hop, Michelle in Las Vegas for tuning in.
Word up, man.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you. OG Husky Radio. Stay posted. More interviews to come.